Today's episode is brought to you by the Why Do We Say That podcast.
Hey, B-word. You know I have a hard time pronouncing things, or I don't always know what sayings are, like whatever flash in a pan means, or there's two birds in a bush and one in your hand.
My friend, you are not what they say smart as a whip. But I do have a remedy for you.
What's that? Do tell.
You should check out the Why Do We Say That podcast. It's hosted by a father-son duo, Scott and Liam Kelly. Their show goes through the meanings and etymologies of everyday phrases. They also have a game called Word or Not a Word. Season 2 is set to start in early 2022, and their episodes drop every Tuesday. You should check them out on wherever you get your podcasts.
I guess I'm going to do that, B-word. I will not throw in the towel just yet.
You're listening to the Bleach Brothers podcast, hosted by B-Word and Jake. Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast. This is B-Word and Jake. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm good, man. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing all right, buddy. I think this is going to be a good week for us. We've been doing some guest spots on some different podcasts. I've been on a couple. We've got a joint one coming up. You've got some coming up too. So I think it's been pretty good, man. I mean, quite a start to 2022, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, busy, productive, trying to get it out there, I mean, we've seen some growth with the show, which has been really nice and appreciative. But also just trying to branch out there, see what else, it's not that I get sick of just talking to you, but you know what I mean? It is nice to get that. I mean, sometimes they want both of us, sometimes they want one of us, and it's just enjoyable. It's enjoyable to connect with other people, see other ideas, see how they're doing their show. And, even I think I enjoy the green room talk the most. What about you?
I agree with the green room. I mean, last week we had Mitch on, and while we all knew each other, it was still one of those things where, we weren't too familiar with how are we all going to talk as we're recording. How do we feel going from topic to topic? I thought it was very smooth. Of course, if you're listening to this episode, hopefully you checked out our last episode, New Year, New Do, to kind of get the feedback on how we came up with the name Bleach Bros. That seems to be a really good topic for everybody. I mean, everybody kind of gets a nice little giggle out of it so far. I mean, we haven't been banned off anything yet, so I think that's positive.
No, it was fun. It was nice to catch back up. I've had a lot of reactions, which, isn't surprising based on the content of people reaching out to me, a lot of laughter, a lot of, oh my God, I can believe you did that, Jake, but I can't believe you did that, Jake. But just craziness. I don't know. I was really annoyed today.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting really tired, and this isn't going political or anything, but the way the world reacts to certain things just pisses me off.
Yeah.
In the sense of remember that blue black dress or white and gold dress?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you heard Apple or weather, or I don't know, those stupid things.
Yeah.
Where they overtake the internet. Did you hear the news about the fart girl today?
No.
So there's a show called 90 Day Fiance, okay? Have you heard of that show? It's on TLC or something.
I have, because I have a couple of female coworkers that watch it, but I've never seen it. All I know is that there was a dude on there who was like a little person with no neck.
Okay.
I don't even remember what his name is, but...
So there's this hot chick on there, and I will say it, I saw a picture of her, but she became famous, and I actually heard about her a couple months ago or weeks ago. She was selling her farts in a jar, because the internet's disgusting and men are disgusting. And if you can Google it, there's a porn about it, right? So essentially, she would fart in a jar with rose petals in it, film it, and then mail them to them. And she was selling some of them for $1,000 a pop.
Dude, you wouldn't even understand how many thousands of dollars I can make off of my farts.
She said she was making $38,000 a week. Now, mind you, this is in pounds, so I don't know, the exchange rate of fart dollars, but she went to the hospital today.
Did she get diagnosed with shitcoin?
No, she went to the All right, here's my problem, B-word. She went to the hospital. Now, this was on every like Twitter, Facebook, like all over the place. And it was just annoying me because everywhere I turned, fart girl's there.
Okay.
And I call her fart. I can't even remember her damn name anymore. I read it to try to prepare for the show. I didn't write it down. I'm just going to call her fart girl. So she went to the hospital because she thought she was having like a heart attack or something. And it was literally one of those episodes, like, you know, those episodes like I didn't know I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And they had to poop or something, or they thought they had to poop. Her diet consisted of like cans of black beans and protein milkshakes only. So she was like making it so she would make it so she said she had farted like 97 times in like 2 days or something like that. Well, apparently she had such a gas buildup that was the heart palpitation, everything she thought she had. But she was embarrassed to tell him like what she was eating because she knew it was so unhealthy and everything. And that took over the news today, B-word. That was, and I'm bringing it up on here, but it's more to just piss me off. It was just like
if we're reporting on that as a society, what is it that we're not reporting on would be my question.
Like, okay, it's funny to see that, but that used to be like, remember when you would stand in line with your mom at the grocery store or your dad or whatever, right? And you'd see the tabloids and there'd be like alien baby from Bigfoot and stuff. Like this should be on the National Enquirer. This should be like this used to be a National Enquirer story, right? Where you knew it might be real. You'd laugh at it. You'd sort of chuckle and you'd look at it in the line and go, maybe I want to read that. Maybe I don't. But now that's like actual fucking news.
You know what, like man? I think this lady needs to watch more cartoons. Specifically, I feel like she needs to watch Popeye. She needs to eat her spinach. Well, like if you're going to eat that much protein, you need to have something in there to kind of grease the tube that your turd's going to come out of. And spinach or lettuce or something of that nature would probably help out pretty good.
to make this better, B-word, and you brought up spinach. Me and the wife were cooking together tonight, right? We made ramen and we put wilted spinach in it and some carrots because, you know, seasonal vegetables. But I'm explaining this story to my wife. Now, you know me, I love to have my wife's natural reaction. So she's sitting at the table, you know, with like the bowls and trying to get everything ready. And I went, hey, did you hear about Fart Girl? And my wife, the same as you, like, no. So I start telling her, and my wife makes this disgusted face and goes, what is wrong with people? And not about Fart Girl, that people buying she was very interested in her buying the farts.
Yeah.
Or not her, the people buying her farts. And my wife's just like, you know, there are just things that people don't need to know, people need to do. And then she goes, like, what makes people in their minds think, I'm just going to go find somebody that's into this with me? Because we went down some other stories about some other people that, you know, the things they do. And I was like, babe, Craigslist is there. Like you can find anybody that's into what you're into. And she just goes, you know, vanilla is an amazing ice cream flavor. And I don't care if that's what it is. It's good enough. She goes, the people that try to add too much, she equates it to me at a frozen yogurt house. I don't know how to mix stuff. I throw too many things in the box and it just fucks it up. And I just laughed so hard at my wife making the face, just wondering about this fart girl. And then the last question, she looks over and she goes, how does she close the fart jar so fast? And I go, what? She goes, like, how is this being achieved? Like, is she farting in like Instacork? Is somebody corking it for her? And I'm like, this is the problem, babe. See, now you're sucked in. Now you're sucked into Fart Girl story. But tonight we're going to talk about Robin Williams. And there's two reasons I brought this up. It was happening today. It pissed me off. But two, it reminds me of, do you remember the movie Jack?
Yes.
Remember when they farted in a can?
Yes.
That's where I'm going with it.
Yes. Yeah, and at least, you know, Robin Williams played Popeye, so he ate his spinach.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. I know we're going to kind of talk about this, too, in a mental health aspect, and I kind of feel like there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with some shit that they don't really know how to process it, and I'm not trying to diagnose this woman by any means, but it kind of sounds like in whatever fashion she's getting a fix off of people trying to sniff her farts out of a jar. And that's just kind of sick all the way around. You know, like it's sick for the people that are buying it. It's sick for the people that are sniffing it. It's, you know, it's just a really weird situation. And yeah.
Well, it's also the fact like bringing up mental health, because that's something we're going to talk about tonight, is the social media aspect of why these things are news now and how
Yeah.
people react to them and how it's important. And, you know, you are saying there's a fix. I think monetary value is the biggest fix for her right now. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. If I could wear socks all day and somebody wanted to buy each pair that I took off for $30, you're damn right I'm probably going to sell them, right? But I don't know. I'm not the type of person that goes, oh, let me create an Instagram account and let me get famous and let me sell my farts in a jar. Like, that's just awkward. Like,
See, when we were growing up, they used to have bumper stickers that said "Save gas, fart in a jar," and I thought it was hilarious because when I was a kid, it's like, oh, fart in a jar, and then the whole saving gas because gas is hella expensive now, and I don't know, man, $30 is depending on the size of the car, that's a half tank of gas. So, it's one of those things. I don't know, man. I don't know, but let's get away from that shit and let's talk about some fun stuff here real quick. So we already said that we're going to talk about Robin Williams tonight. And when we discussed our rundown a few days ago and kind of what we wanted to discuss this episode, you and I really wanted to kind of get back to what we started doing when we started this podcast, and that was doing some rankings. So for those of you that might be a new listener to us or something of that nature, Jake and I started this podcast to more or less as a project of our conversations. We would have hours-long conversations regularly where we would talk about, hey, what's the best movie in this genre? Or what's the best actor? Or what's your best fan casting? Or what theory do you think is happening in this multiverse or whatever? So, we're going to get back to that today, and we're gonna use Robin Williams as our subject.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, Jake, let's kind of talk about some of Robin Williams' best movies. I know that you and I are both a huge fan, but before we get in there, how do you see Robin Williams? Do you see Robin Williams as an actor, film actor, excuse me? Do you see Robin Williams as a comedian? Or do you see Robin Williams as a TV actor? Or do you see him as something entirely different?
I see him as a movie actor. And here's the thing. Later in life, I saw him as a comedian because it like opened my eyes, like especially when I started doing stand-up comedy. When you find out how many people did stand-up comedy or improv and stuff like that.
Right.
And to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Is amazing how good he was, how much he can steal the show and steal a scene. I never really watched Mork and Mindy, so I don't see the TV acting of him. I've watched tons of documentaries about it, though, and it interests me. But I will always see him as a movie actor because that's how I was introduced to him. And I think a lot of things that we deal with and talk about, especially with nostalgic things or film, music, stuff like that, it's typically how you were introduced to something of how you're going to always feel about it.
Okay.
Mind you, as I'm saying, I was introduced to him in movies. And then later I found out when I was really intrigued by him, more about his comedy side and then, what else he did. Because I remember as a kid, we watched a lot of movies. We've talked about that, but I was always amazed at my parents, how they were always like, oh, that guy was in this movie and stuff. And I never understood how they knew so many people in movies and names, because you're a kid, like I'm 6. Like, how do you know that he's in all these things? And sometimes you'd think they're real, right? Like this is a real movie, right?
Right.
And now I'm that way when I'm older. Like I love going back and watching older films and finding people that are in them. Like I was watching, just for example, not trying to sidetrack, but Maverick last night with Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah.
And is it Alfred?
Wait. Oh, Maverick.
Yeah. The cowboy movie.
Okay. I was thinking Top Gun when you said that. So no, I love Maverick. Such a good movie.
So who played Doc Ock? Alfred Molina?
Yes.
He's in that.
Yes.
And it's just one of those things I was like, wow, he's in this. And so it's moments like that. But I was introduced to him as a movie guy. So I'm going to always equate him first with movies and think of the characters he played. What about you?
I was interested. So I think probably the first film that I remember seeing him in, even though I've probably seen other films with him in it prior to that, was Aladdin. And I didn't actually see him because it was animated. Mm-hmm. So it was really just about his, his voice and all of that sort of stuff. I don't really remember if Mrs. Doubtfire came before or after that. So it may have been Mrs. Doubtfire, but Aladdin was what I remember my introduction being.
What year did Aladdin come out? Because Doubtfire came out in 93.
I'd have to look, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But when I think of Robin Williams, I think of Mork and Mindy, because I would go to my grandparents' house and I would watch a series of television shows. So you'd have like the Cosby Show, you'd have like Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, Dukes of Hazzard, the Jeffersons. You'd have all these different shows that I don't want to say that they babysat me with, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But I would say that they are. Aladdin was 92, Mrs. Doubtfire was 93.
I just looked it up too. So, yeah.
But I got introduced to a lot of those shows, like Welcome Back, Kotter, as an example. I didn't realize that John Travolta was in that. Like, so I watched Mork and Mindy probably first that I can remember from watching reruns, and I thought, wow, this guy's really weird, and how he actually came over from Happy Days. I think that was my very first introduction of Robin Williams, like live action, might have been from Happy Days, because that's when Mork was introduced, and they did the spinoff of Mork and Mindy. So I think of him I don't think of him as a television actor, but that was my first introduction of him, if that makes sense. I think if I had to put a title on him, like what exactly is Robin Williams? He was a comedian with a huge heart. Like, I love reading about this man. There, you see where he was, where there was put into his contract that the movie studio had to employ a certain amount of people that were in poverty or homeless on almost every one of his shows. He was the type of guy who would sneak into a crowd. I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience where he's talking about the Comedy Store.
I remember that one. Yeah.
And how he was performing, and Robin Williams was in the Comedy Store, and he like waited through Joe Rogan's set and then like shook his hand and left. Like, some of those types of things are just incredible stories to me. So I definitely see him as a comedian, but I think at the end of the day, he was a really good guy who struggled mightily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it equates to, and we'll get into this a little more with mental health. It equates to how people can show one side and be totally different on the rest. Because like when I watch documentaries about him, the family would always say, "Oh, he's so quiet and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, you eventually have to have an off switch."
Yeah.
But also, like, you're performing, right? So you're supposed to project in society something that people want to see, and happiness and all that stuff, right? And you could be totally adverse when it's turned off, or when you're home, or when and it doesn't mean he's depressed when the movie's off. He might be depressed during the movie. But if you're gonna break down Robin Williams films, because that's what we are going to talk about, would you rather start with his worst movie or his best top 5?
Why don't you give me his worst movie, so that way we can celebrate him as we finalize his movie roles?
So it's hard for me to break this down, but I don't think Jacob the Liar is a very good movie.
Well, it's because your name's in it, and it's also got liar. And that makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, we could rename our podcast into Jacob's a Liar for all I care.
Yeah, Jake the Hater turns to Jake the Liar. No, but I guess I'd pick License to Wed, and I love Mandy Moore. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I don't like that movie is I think he does a decent job, but it's almost like Meet the Parents. It's so pain in your stomach, awkward, terrible feeling,
right,
that I have a hard time getting through it. But also, the character, like he's technically the villain in the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the character he's portraying is not very. There's really there's a rhyme and reason, but it's not justified, in my opinion. So it's badly written in the sense of who's playing the parts and how they play them. Like, Mandy Moore is perfectly cast to be, somebody about to be married. The husband is perfectly cast to be the guy that's going to marry her. Robin Williams is cast as a priest who's, supposed to, make sure that they're fit to be wed. And the way he acts is just, it's like one scene you think like it's like he's in love with her and wants to sleep with her. And the next one, it's like he's like a dad figure. The next one, he's like a creepy, weird uncle. The next one, he's the priest. So it never really made sense in the pity your stuff. It's like they just wrote scenes and went, oh, that'd be funny if he was a creepy uncle in this scene. And that'd be funny if he was the priest. And so I just think the movie's badly written. I think it's overacted in the sense of everybody that was typecast plays their part well, but none of them mesh. So I think that would be my worst movie. What about you?
So I had RV written down. And I probably will still stick with RV. If you haven't seen RV, it's very typical of one of those summer movies where you have to get the family together and you have to go on this trip. It was almost kind of like a National Lampoon's Vacation style plot where things go wrong and you have to overcome, and the overcoming brings the family together. And not that Robin Williams starred badly in the movie. I just thought that the movie was just a terrible film. So that's why I'm putting it down as his worst film. It's not his performance, it's the storyline.
Okay.
But I know we talked about having one. There's one movie that I actually like that box office wise is a bad movie. And I like the movie only because it was not what I expected at all. And that's World's Greatest Dad. It came out in 2009. It's a story about Robin Williams as a father. His 15-year-old son dies from erotic asphyxiation. So he was trying to, choke himself with a belt, and it worked while he was masturbating. And so rather than to deal with the thought of his son dying in the manner that he did, he ended up writing his son a suicide note. And then he ended up becoming a fixture within the school and the community as this person for suicide, like dealing with suicide. And it was just this really weird movie. It's definitely an honorable mention for me as far as like as far as a terrible movie goes. I do think that it's one that people should watch. It does offer a different side of Robin Williams. I think it's a decent performance from him. Okay. But definitely those would be my top two, if you would.
Okay.
But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that makes sense. I've never seen that movie. I've always seen, the cover where that's where he's like standing with a mug and in a robe or something. And it sort of it looked like all the movies coming out at the time, like Dan in Real Life with Steve Carell, and the movie where Will Ferrell lives on his front lawn when his wife's divorcing him. Like all those movies came around the same time. And it was like that, trying to do that dark, realistic comedy.
It's definitely a black comedy.
Yeah. So it which went past me. But yeah, I think those are all bad films. And the worst part is, as we're saying they're bad films, we're still not saying he was bad in them.
No, I think his performance was good in the two movies that I discussed. And even in Jake, what's the movie you picked? Jacob the Liar.
Jacob the Liar, yeah.
Yeah, his performance in that one was fine too. I've seen that movie. There's a couple movies of Robin Williams that I haven't seen before. And as we talk about this, I'll probably go through and circle those just to watch them at some point. They'll be on my to-do list at some point. I'll get to them because I do think that he was an incredible actor. I really do. A lot of people think of him as this comedy actor, this comedic performance actor, but he actually had some really good dramas.
He did, but the other problem is when I was looking up and making my list is he's one of those characters that you put him in a film and you automatically think it's going to be him in the movie, and it's not necessarily him in the movie. Yeah, like you posted up a meme today where in the bottom right hand corner it was like caricatures, like Funko caricatures of Robin Williams, and he's in the Colonel hat and all that, like the jungle guy. And that's from Night in the Museum, which is a Ben Stiller movie. Yeah, Robin Williams in it, and he's an integral character, but it's not his movie.
Right.
Like Good Will Hunting is, I mean, I've never seen it, so you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but from my understanding,
he plays an integral part in the movie, but it's a Matt Damon film.
That's what I mean by that. And so there's a lot of movies on this list where it shows how good of an actor he was and how much reach he had. Yeah. In the sense of it's still not a Robin Williams movie, but you can equate it to being a Robin Williams movie.
Well, it's kind of like 9 Months with Hugh, not Hugh Jackman,
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant and his ex-wife Elizabeth Berkley, and they're expecting a baby, and he just so happens to be this doctor they didn't want, and I forget what accent he had. I think it might have been a Russian accent, but it wasn't his movie either. But he was incredible in it, and I think that's one of those things where when you're talking about building a cast it's not just about your lead characters. It's also about the individual who contributes in a way that moves the story along. And
Yeah,
I thought he did an incredible job with that in many films.
the hard part though is sometimes when you have a character or a person, an actor like Robin Williams, that you know is going to steal the show. So it's like you can't really write a scene for him in a movie, right? You have at least have
Right.
to have more, because if you
Right.
do, it's like holy, like when he's in Friends with Billy Crystal,
Oh yeah,
loved it.
yeah, and it was
you know,
completely improvised.
yeah, and it's amazing, and it's one of those things, you know what I mean, and it steals the show.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to cast him in a movie where you know he's going to steal the show. He'll suck out the air of the room.
Right.
But
So with that being said, what would you say is your honorable mentions for Robin Williams movies? So great. We're going to do a ranking of the top 5.
Mhm.
But what would be two honorable mentions?
the problem is both mine are dramas.
Okay.
And the reason I say that's a problem is because when me and you were just talking about this, I started to feel like, yeah, he has a lot of good drama films. And I feel like I picked mostly comedic roles because that's also how I look at him. Even though like comedic roles have like some serious moments, there's still a comedy film in my eyes. Number one honorable mention was Bicentennial Man.
Okay.
I know a lot of people hate the movie. I think it's way too long, hence why I could never put it in my top 5. But I have a nostalgia, like a great. I like the movie because I love robots. I liked the time it came out in '99, I believe. Yeah, '99, where that was like the time when AI and all that stuff was really coming forefront, and a lot of those movies were coming out.
Right.
And I just like the message of the movie. I do agree it was way too long and it was drawn out, but also we've discussed I like slow, boring movies that you have to think about and like really pay attention to. And I just thought it was a good movie. I thought it was fun. I liked how the robot, looked like him. The other thing is though, it's almost like two different movies. Hence why it's an honorable mention too. It's like it starts out super serious and droll, and then it has moments where him and the female robot are singing the UGLY song, the ugly song.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's stuff like that that's interesting. The second one would be 1 Hour Photo. And a lot of people hate that movie.
Yeah, I'm one of them. Not a fan of 1 Hour Photo.
It's just because he gave me the heebie-jeebies. And it was cool to see him in a role that that was the first like actual like time I took him really serious and didn't look at him like a comedian actor. Like I know other movies came out before that, but that was the movie that I was like, holy crap, he's taken a totally different twist and a different side. And that's why I really enjoyed that film.
The reason why 1 Hour Photo does not end up in my worst Robin Williams film is because at the end of the day, his performance was incredible. Mm-hmm. Like incredible. I hated the movie, but his performance was fantastic. So I have 2 honorable mentions here. And one of them I keep switching out. I've switched it out 3 times today. So I'll give you the one that stayed consistent. It's called Awakenings. Okay. It's with him and Robert De Niro. It has to deal with patients who have Parkinson's disease, and Robin Williams ends up finding what appears to be a cure for Parkinson's disease, and basically it's like a methamphetamine or some sort of upper that kind of offsets the patients, and so they actually start to live a life. They start to have interactions. They start to awaken. Hence the name. And it's a sad movie. It ends well, but it ends with a sad ending. And as you know, you and I've talked about, I like realistic endings. My understanding is Awakenings was based on a true story. I'd have to verify that, but great film. I thought he was amazing in that film. It was not necessarily a comedy. While there were funny parts, it was more or less a drama. So that's in my honorable mention there. And then I have a really hard time choosing between these two. So I'm going to go with Good Will Hunting. And the reason why I'm going with Good Will Hunting is I thought that his performance was incredible. After watching Good Will Hunting several years after, I didn't realize that the part where he's talking about how his wife farted in the middle of the night was completely improvised.
In a jar?
And what's that?
Was it in a jar?
I don't know. He may have caught it in a jar. But Matt Damon's reaction to that was pure. and so that made it so much better. But the movie that I almost put into honorable mentions, and I know we talked about two, and this has to do with his performance, and it also has to do with the casting, was Popeye.
Oh, see, and I like that movie. Yeah,
I like Popeye. It's a terrible movie, but I like Popeye. I thought he played an incredible Popeye. I thought the chick that they casted for Olive Oil was incredible. She was the mom from The Shining. I forget what her name is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm going to go with Good Will Hunting. Popeye was a great one. Almost made the honorable mention. Is not in the top 5, but yeah, honorable mentions there.
So then, what are your top 5? Do you have a particular, before you start, because this always happens, do you have a particular order?
I do.
Oh, good. You do.
I do.
Okay, and then are you doing it like usual, where it's based on your opinion? Like it's your opinion, but no, just like rewatchability, like what we usually do, right? Okay, cool.
Yes, rewatchability for sure. And then I do have an actual top 5. Is yours top 5? Like it's Mine's actually ranked?
Mine's okay. Ranked. Yeah.
So then why don't we go one after the other? You want me to start?
Yep, you go with number 5.
Okay, so number 5, I have Jack. We already talked about Jack.
Yep.
I love Jack. Jack is the story of a kid who has a disease that ages him rapidly. So he starts out as an infant or as a baby, goes into an infant. And basically when you catch up into the storyline, he's a middle-aged man that's going to elementary school. Yep. And it's an incredible story about friendship. It's a great story about dealing with things that other people don't deal with and watching somebody have to struggle with it. I know Bill Cosby was in it. I liked the fact that Bill Cosby was in it at the time. He played a great role as a mentor and a counselor to Jack. And of course, Jennifer Lopez was in it back in the day when she was still Jenny from the Block. Like I totally love that. Ultimately, great movie, great performance, wonderful storyline. Doesn't necessarily end the greatest because you assume what's going to happen, but I love the ending to it. So Jack's my number 5.
Yeah, see, Jack, it's like if Billy Madison was an actually serious movie.
Like it's almost like if Benjamin Button was in reverse.
Right. Well, so if you rewound Benjamin Button to watch it. Yeah, no, Jack. So Jack, I'm not going to tell you where Jack's on mine because it's on my top 5, but it's not number 5. But yeah, I love that film for all the points you're saying. It was one of those ones too. When I was growing up, it made me aware because like I remember when movies would come out and they would put it on like we would watch like Hard Copy or like 2020 or those shows with your parents, like the news, Entertainment Tonight or whatever. And then they would be like, this movie's coming out with Robin Williams. And then they showed the actual diagnosis of these kids. So I learned about that actual disease.
Right.
You know, and I just liked that movie a lot. I thought it was great. My number 5, though, is The Birdcage.
I love The Birdcage.
I cannot control my laughter when I watch that movie.
So good.
I think the performances are great. It's awkward, but he's awesome in it. When he's teaching the people in his show how to walk and dance. I just like that movie. It's one of those, like I could pop in and watch it all the time. It's number 5. It's not going to be, I mean, it wasn't low enough to be a honorable mention because I always watch it. And if it's on, I'll throw it on. I enjoy it. So mine would be The Birdcage.
So the funny thing about The Birdcage, it's also on my list. I won't tell you where just yet. It's higher on my list than number 5, obviously. Yeah. But here's the thing about it. Like it was political, but it wasn't, right? It was back when there were two sides of politics. You can argue that there's more sides, but two sides of politics that argued about things that mattered, but they weren't as heightened as they are now. So the premise of the premise of the film, yeah,
they were definitive, but you could debate.
The premise of the film is that you had Robin Williams' son who met a girl in college, and the girl happens to be the daughter of a very conservative Republican, whatever title they put on it, senator, right? And so you had this thing on there. It was just a great way to do it. I thought the John Wayne scene was phenomenal in The Birdcage. You didn't pick a bad movie here, my man. I don't know that there's anything we're going to argue about tonight.
Right. No, that's a good one on mine. Just like when you said you picked this and it's higher, of course, and just like I picked Jack. I'll be interested to see where it is for you. For my number 4, though, I'll jump into that. Is Jumanji, and it's not higher, but it's one of those movies that's synonymous with him. I think. Um, it came out after Aladdin. It came out after Mrs. Doubtfire, and it was one of those things like you just knew that it was going to be fun with him in it. It was going to be family friendly. The jokes would hit. And it's an enjoyable movie all around, like with the graphics and everything. And I guess it's amazing too because it's one of those rare stories where you could take like an 18-page book and turn it into a full-fledged movie, and it's enjoyable because that's a hard thing to do. Most of the time they do it like Where the Wild Things Are, right? Failure of a movie, Cat in the Hat, failure of a movie. You don't expect it to be good, and it is. So number 4 for me is Jumanji.
Jumanji didn't make my list. Good movie. I enjoyed it. I think I've only watched it once or twice. I think it was overhyped for me. I don't know that I saw it like when it first came out. I think it was one of those movies where everybody liked it. And you know me, if everybody likes something, I'm like the last person on that train just because I don't want to be. So my number 4 is Hook. I love Hook. I love the premise of Hook. I love the casting of Hook. I love everything about the movie Hook. Like there is a valid argument that Hook might even be my number 1. Mm-hmm. Like Hook is an amazing film. I thought the score was done well. The soundtrack was done well. The storyline of how Hook became this middle-aged man and how he forgot about himself. I just can't get over the casting of that movie. Like some of the most perfectly cast characters were cast in that movie. The whole Rufio scene and the way that he becomes a lost boy and gains his memory back and that sort of stuff. That's amazing. The Lost Boys, Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell. Like, I don't know that you get a better movie than Hook, let alone better Robin Williams movies than Hook, but somehow it made it to number 4. So my number 4 is Hook.
Yeah, see, Rufio made me want to dye my hair, crow like a rooster, and fight with a little golden sword. Even though I was a huge fan of Captain Hook, as we know, I like the villains. I loved it when Jack, his son, switches over and wants to be a little pirate. I thought that I loved that part because I'll just say it. Hook's my number 3. So. Okay. I agree with all the points you made. Amazing casting, amazing writing. Because it's a retelling of a classic story in the way that it's still the classic story, but a continuation without it feeling like you had to have a prequel or it's a sequel or anything. It's so well done. I like reimagining of things when it's seamless.
Yeah.
And that's why Hook's 3 on mine, because it's a seamless reimagining of the story that you already know with the story you already know.
Yeah. 3 on mine is The Birdcage. And we've already talked about that. I love The Birdcage. So that leaves the top 2 for both of us.
Well, I'll run this real quick. 2 for me is Jack. So, and I don't want to the reason I'm saying it really quick is because we've already talked about Jack and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
So just give me yours now because we're pretty similar here.
Number 2 for me is Aladdin.
Okay.
As I talked about, I think one of my very first introductions to, oh my gosh, that's Robin Williams, was Aladdin. Again, an animated film. For those of you that have listened to the podcast for any sort of time, you understand that once I reached a certain age, I never liked animated films. Like we always talk animated films. I just can't get into them. I can watch Aladdin to this day and still love it. I thought the way he portrayed Genie was incredible. I have no clue how the animators kept up with it, with all of his facial expressions, with how much improv he did. He was incredible as Genie. I don't think he sang as Genie, but I do know that he improved most of that movie, if not all of that movie, and was tremendous in that. So Aladdin is my number 2.
See, I can put it on there because I guess, and it's weird because I'm usually the animation fan here, and it's an amazing movie, and it's amazing when you find out later in life that it's improv and how the artists had to draw based on his acting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my honorable mentions, and it saddens me to say that. I don't. That's not how I was introduced to Robin Williams, and I know it's Robin Williams, but I guess it's because I just like watching Robin Williams and not just a blue genie cartoon.
Yeah.
I don't have a great justification. That's why I feel bad. I'm stammering because I don't have a good reason why it's not on my list, because it's a great fucking film. It's a great film.
So does this mean our number one is the same?
It's going to be, I'm going to tell you right now, I know it is before you say it. Hello!
Mrs. Doubtfire. What an incredible, I think I actually appreciate this movie so much more now that I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Because when this movie came out, we were like tweens or something, right?
No, I was in second or third. I was in third grade. This came out in 93.
Yeah, I guess we were like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
The reason I remember that, B-word, is remember at J.G. Johnson, where we were going, at the time it was called intermediate school, where we met.
Yeah.
They did in the gymnasium movie night. And the reason it stuck out is I was going to go, you could pick either Mrs. Doubtfire or Life with Mikey with Michael J. Fox, where he was a kid's agent. And I remember I picked Mrs. Doubtfire, and everybody was going to see Mrs. Doubtfire that night, right? And my dad's like, why are you going to go pay to see a movie that you've seen so many damn times that we can rent whenever you want? So I went and actually saw Life with Mikey, which I really enjoyed. But it stuck out to me because I remember going to the school. That was the first time we did one of those overnight movie things at the school. Because Mrs. Doubtfire is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything about it. Like his cousin who gives them prosthetics, the family, the kids, how they play, like the style, the music. Pierce Brosnan as a douche as always.
But the whole refrigerator scene when he stuck his face in a cake.
That's all improv.
That's all improv.
Yeah, and when it dripped into the coffee and stuff.
Yeah, that was entirely improv too. Yeah, you can actually watch her in the movie. I forget what her name is, but you can watch her in the movie. Try not to laugh when his face is dripping the cream off of the cake. It's a tremendous movie, and I think as a dad, especially as a divorced dad, like that movie actually means quite a bit to me, and I didn't realize it back in the 90s. Like it wasn't a movie that I thought would be impressionable enough on me that way, where it was like, you watch him progress cross-dressing and impersonating somebody else and living this alternate lifestyle, but it's not like he was doing it for himself. He was doing it for the kids. Like you saw his motivations and you saw the way that he loved his kids and the extent that he would go to let them know that he loved them. And also the ability to risk everything for his kids. I think it's one of the most tremendous movies of fiction, let's say, that teaches you that no matter what, your kids are a priority. Like he could have given up. He could have said, I'm not doing this anymore. But instead he chose to become what ended up being Mrs. Doubtfire, which was a tremendous character for sure.
Well, yeah, and it showed range. It showed so much that he could do. Because I mean, that is after Aladdin came out, and then the opening scene where he's a cartoon actor.
Yeah,
you're seeing that, and then
wasn't he voicing Tweety Bird or something like Tweety Bird initially?
He was voicing some bird, and then got fired because he wanted.
He was smoking a cigarette. Yeah.
But no, it's a great movie. It's great to know. Also, I was a separated single dad. It's the thing. I would do something like that, and that's the thing. It's relatable, even though it's so fictitious, and you feel for him because also, like I was saying earlier, I feel like I picked all comedies, but it's what do they call them, dramedies or whatever?
It's a dramedy,
right? But because it has its serious moments,
it does.
And it's heartfelt. Like at the end when you see that he did everything for his kids, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong here, B-word, because you've been through the court system like me, and it seems very unfair towards men at times. You feel for him because you're like, he showed he would do anything, and he's still being punished, and you're doing the right thing, but you're not. And it's like sometimes that's where gray areas and laws need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And
I think that it's really hard, man. Divorce is going to continue to happen no matter what happens in this life. You know what I mean? And there's always going to be children who are of separate households. But one of the most beautiful things was at the end when Mrs. Doubtfire received the mail from the daughter, or not the daughter, but from a young girl who was talking about her house was split up and she didn't want it to be split up,
Mm-hmm.
and Mrs. Doubtfire gave her feedback on that, and then Sally Field's character, the mom, ended up listening to that and how impactful that was. I think there's room in society for the courts to justify or to make decisions on custody battles and different things like that. I just think at the end of the day, if you're penalizing a good parent for trying to be a parent, that creates worse parents.
You create problems, you create worse parents. Because I mean, the round I was going to go down is men still need to be men.
Yeah.
And women need to be women. And that I'm not going down that political path of like, whatever you are and how you feel, that's for you. Good. But in the sense of that, it needs to be okay to be able to reach out.
Yeah.
It needs to be okay to go through things and vocalize it. And, if need be, get help. I think, especially for men, we're put in this box, right? That we should be strong at all times. And as a dad, you should always, be a certain way, and you can't have weakness. You can't cry. You can't do that. And we know all those things aren't necessarily true, but you have to be able to open up somewhere and find something.
Right.
And we've pushed that so far away that it's like, it's a fear.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of like family, guy friends and stuff that I've talked to. They're like, oh, I just won't get help because of this or that. And I'm not necessarily meaning they need a ton of help, but I don't know, man. Like I'll be upfront, like, me. Cause like Robin Williams, at the end, I mean, we're all aware he ended up killing himself, right?
Robin Williams committed suicide in 2014. At the same time, we realized that we thought he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but he was actually diagnosed with Lewy body disease, which, affected him mentally. But I think previous to that, I mean, Robin Williams struggled. Robin Williams had some demons, man. He struggled with substance abuse. He struggled with alcohol. He was an excellent guy when the camera was on, and he was an excellent guy when he was in public. And I don't want to say that he wasn't an excellent guy when he was at home by himself. I just think that he was traumatized by things that he didn't know how to overcome himself, number one. And number two, that weighed on him heavily. And I don't know if he sought help for some of that stuff that he was dealing with, other than like the substance abuse and the alcohol and whatever, because that's well documented. But he struggled mightily, man. And what's amazing is he made the world a happy place. I mean, an amazing place with what he created and what he helped to broadcast to the world. And the fact that he was struggling so mightily behind closed doors is sad. Yeah, and real quick before we get into that, I know that we're going to be talking about some mental health stuff. So I just want to plug this. I know that we don't plug things all that often. We're not being paid by anybody to do this, but if you are struggling mentally with anything, you're always welcome to private message us. And while we might not be able to, fix anything that you have going on, we'll offer an ear. But also if, life gets hard. We're going to talk about some subjects here that are pretty tough. And if suicide is crossing your mind, I just want to let you know that the National Suicide Prevention Helpline is available 24 hours a day. They can be reached at 1-800-273-8255. Again, the National Suicide Prevention Helpline, 800-273-8255. Make sure to reach out, get some help, talk with somebody, talk with your loved ones, talk with your friends. But Jake, sorry to cut you off right there, man. No. What were you saying?
No, you were fine. Cause I mean, I'm going to open up here, and I don't know, if you, I mean, me and you are best friends, right? We've opened up besides the show on our own time. And I don't know, what you are comfortable sharing on your own end. But like right now, to be honest, you know this. I've suffered with alcohol abuse,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's been a struggle. I do see a counselor now. I love it. It goes great. I have great conversations. Me and you have actually talked about it. I don't care about the stigma with it or anything. I'm very upfront about that because also I'm one of those people. I need that. Because like when I first met my counselor, it was funny. I sat down. He goes, "On paper, Jake, you're amazing. You're happy. You make people laugh. You have great entertainment value. Like you're amazing. Like you're high up the ladder on your job. You're very successful. So what's wrong here?" And that's the problem, is finding that, right? Like you don't always have to know.
Right.
Because in 2003 or 2004, and you know, we've talked about this, but you know, I tried to kill myself.
Yeah.
And that was a struggle. I mean, listeners of this show that are really good friends have known this. Some of them were there and helped me through it. And it's rough, man. I hit that point. I didn't see anything turning back, and somehow I survived what I did. I will tell you, because it's against the law to do that. Psych ward is no joke. It is not fun. It is not fun to be naked and have people checking on you. You have to rent out a shower head and all those weird things. It's worse than how the movies portray it. And I wish I would have talked to people sooner. And over the years, I wish I would have been better about it for myself, because I feel like as I was saying, with men, we have this stigma that you can't get help. Why should you? You should just man up and stop.
Right.
And that's not always the case. And it's okay to feel that way. And so, as you were saying, you know, if people ever wanted to reach out, we're there. I mean, I've been there. And the other thing is, you know, I've learned it doesn't just get cured. It doesn't just go away. Like,
no, it doesn't. And it's something that you struggle with often. You know, this episode will air on a Sunday, and the previous Sunday from when this episode aired, the entire world saw, arguably one of the greatest wide receivers walk out of the game in Antonio Brown. Now there's a lot of debate on what did the coach say, what did he do, blah, 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 blah. But this is a man who struggled mightily with some mental health stuff. And you know, we're on Twitter, and I'm a fan of football, and so's Jake. And, you know, we get to see some of the comments that are made there. And the last thing I want to do is call him crazy. I think that he is a man who's extremely blessed athletically. And honestly, when I saw it, I felt sad. I didn't point my finger and laugh and say, haha, look at what Antonio Brown did. I sat there and I went, wow, I wonder what he's dealing with that's making him do this, you know. And it could be something as simple as a fight with the coach and whatever. But the pattern is he's somebody who has struggled with mental health. And for me, I've dealt with a few things that are very tough. You know, there's the dissolving of relationships. I mean, I was married very young to my daughter's mom. Should we have been married? Shouldn't we have been married? I mean, it's questionable. But we were young. We were really young. We didn't know what life was. We didn't know how to parent. And candidly, we really didn't know how to be a good significant other to each other. And not knowing all of that and dealing with all of that, you tend to, at least for me, I held ill will toward her when things didn't go the right way. And I know that she did with me too in certain areas. And it was a very volatile divorce. It was a very volatile custody battles for 14 years after we split up. I mean, you want to talk about time. And then, you know, they come with a consequence. You know, all of that costs money. All of that costs time and emotion and stress and everything. And I know that there were a few times, while I never tried it, I always thought this world, or didn't always think, but at times I thought this world might be a better place without me. And I'm really thankful that I never tried to do anything. And I'm very thankful, Jake, that you're here. We've talked about this 100 times, that you have a place in this world, and you've recognized that, you know that. And so that's important. But mental health goes in cycles. You know, you don't just get cured from it. It's not something that you can take a pill and it fixes everything. Recently, my daughter went to college, and I didn't know emotionally how that would be. Candidly, recently I felt that my job is done. like my life is done, my life's work is done. But I've had to reposition my focus to actually be like, hey, you have a second life to live if you want to kind of think of it that way. Your first life was as a father, and your second life is now figuring it out, and you're able to do whatever you want within reason, of course. So that's why Jake and I chose to do the podcast, not because, my daughter's going to college, but because it gives us an outlet to be able to talk with one of our best friends, and moreover, allow us to enjoy conversation about things that we like. And then separately, when we're done recording, it gives us an opportunity to kind of share and do check-ins with each other and all that sort of stuff. And mental health is, for guys, I think that there's a huge stigma there that if you're a man, you got to man up.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't personally have a problem with the phrase man up, I think that sometimes manning up is dealing with the emotional things that you're not supposed to be dealing with. And I think that that's the measure of strength for a man, is how they're able to deal with some of these things.
Well, as you were saying, it can't be cured, as a sense of like, and at least in my viewpoint, that, you're always working on it. I mean, the true statement is somebody that doesn't want help can't get help because they don't want to be helped, right? But in the sense, you have to always grow and think about it and evolve with it and deal with it, and and also realize, like, the one thing I've learned is you're going to have bad days. They're going to suck. It doesn't mean that, if you start taking meds because you need to, or you start going to counseling, or you change something in your life, that you're never going to have another bad day or a bad feeling or a bad thought. I mean, the other thing is too, is it, one thing I learned is you don't have to be an extremist. It doesn't mean like, oh, I just have to quit drinking and do this and all my problems will be solved. No, that might not be the problem. It might be something deeper down. Like, like with me with drinking, it's not really the sense of alcohol. It's more the fix I get of being around people. And, I like to be out. I like to be out of the house sometimes, and family life changes, right? I got to be home and here for my kids and stuff. And I can't just be sitting at a bar all day. But also it's like, what is the value of those relationships? And that's a big thing for people, is that, we need people. We need to be social, and social media is hard because it's social. It's not always the healthiest way. And I'm not somebody that's just going to sit here and shit on Facebook and all those things and, say they're the worst thing for you, even though I'm not going to say they're great for you. It's still social interaction. You need it, but we need that like real humanistic reaction. Like, you made up a good point last week with the name reveal episode, Beware, that kids these days aren't going to have the same stories that we did.
Yeah.
They're not going to do the same stuff. And it's interesting to see how society is going with the sense of these things and how we're equating it to the stuff we have. And by that, I mean technology, interactions, how you deal with people. Like, even this whole situation where, you have to be home or do this or that has changed all of us. But I don't know. And the final point I'll make is that, I'm not trying to say that men only deal with the stigma, women can have their own things and, whatever. But I'm just saying, as a man, from how I feel, it does seem hard that you can't, easily talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think up until recently, there was really a time that if you were emotional as a boy, that you got told, oh, don't be such a sissy or a Sally or you're being a girl or whatever. And it was, it was in a negative way where, your manhood was being called out. And I appreciate the society's taken that turn, because it is really, really important that men pay attention to their mental health. Because we're not going to become the best father we can be if we're continually struggling with X, Y, or Z. We're not going to be the best husband we can be if we're continually struggling with X, Y, or Z. And we're also not going to be the best friend we can be if we're continually struggling with X, Y, or Z. And while I don't expect anybody to be perfect, understand that you're basically walking up a mountain, and if you trip over a pebble, it's okay. Dust yourself off and keep climbing. And also, don't focus on the mountaintop. Focus on the little things. Take pride in saying, hey, I'm going to get from this rock to this rock today, or I'm going to get from this bush to that bush today, and celebrate those little achievements, because you'll find that the more you celebrate the little things, by the time you hit the top, you've been celebrating the whole way. And when all you're doing is focusing on the mountaintop, you're continually saying, why am I not there yet? And so make sure that you're taking the time to adjust whatever it is. My mom said something to me as a kid that reigns true in almost any circumstance. She said, if you're going to eat an elephant, you don't eat it the whole thing. You eat an elephant a bite at a time. When I was a kid, I laughed at that, but it's true. You can't swallow the whole elephant. You have to cut it up and eat it in pieces. Now, why does that matter? Because when you have something so massive, you can't fix the entire thing right now. You have to chip away at it, and you have to fix certain things before you finally fix the whole thing. So, again, if you're struggling, make sure to reach out. Reach out to a loved one, a friend, a family member. Reach out to a counselor. There's no shame in going to counseling, getting some help that way. But if you are considering suicide, I'd implore you not to. I'd ask that understand that you are valuable to this earth. But also I'd ask that you contact the National Suicide Prevention Helpline at 800-273-8255 and just have a conversation. If that's all the advice that you can take from me, literally just have a conversation and talk to somebody that has literally no investment in you, and you can talk with them and discuss whatever it is that's on your mind and just get the help.
That's some Bleach words of wisdom, man.
Yes, sir.
That was good.
Well, while this is a heavy episode, I do want to end it with this. I love Robin Williams, and I love everything that he has added into my life for entertainment value. I have such good memories watching his movies. I'm very, very saddened by the fact that he died battling the demons that he was battling. But if he could, in some way, understand the mark that he made on this earth, I think he would be proud to know that the world is a better place because of Robin Williams.
Yeah, that's very well put. I mean, it was enjoyable to finally break him down and get back to some of the conversations that me and you always had on the phone that started this whole show.
Yep. Well, with that, Jake, what do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk, and come back and get sanitized. This is Jake from the Bleach Bros podcast, and thank you for listening to today's episode. I want to bring to your attention our Linktree. Visit Linktree/Bleach Bros podcast for access to all of our socials, merch, and streaming sites. Linktree is linktr.ee/Bleach Bros podcast, all one word. And if you enjoy our content, make sure to give us a like, give us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and also invite your friends.